Today, I'm excited to welcome Nicole Grinnell. Nicole and I have known each other for a little bit. We're in the podcast industry. I have a podcast. She helps people get booked on podcasts. And so that's kind of how we met. But Nicole comes from a long line of entrepreneurs and small business owners with childhood memories of Christmas resembling episodes of Shark Tank, of all things. For most of her years, she served as a executive assistant in the corporate world and excelled at it, and eventually took that and launched her own company, Bosun, which is also a part of Mic'd Up Booking. And Bosun's a boutique remote staffing firm. Mic'd Up Booking gets people booked on podcasts. So Nicole has her hands in a lot of different things. And I'm excited to have Nicole on the show today. Welcome.
Thanks, Craig. Glad to be here. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you. Now, when we first talked, you said, "Oh, I've got an uncle that lives in Austin. Maybe you know him." And I'm like, "Well, Austin's a big city." And it turns out I did know him.
As a lot of people do in that area.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, tell everybody a little bit about your uncle, because he's advised presidents.
Yeah, at least in the fitness department. I'm not sure on national affairs, but yeah, I mean, like you said in your intro, we are a long line of entrepreneurs. I actually can't think too far back of many people in our family that have worked for someone. They all have kind of had their own ventures. And so my Uncle Paul actually moved out there. It probably was like late 80s, early 90s, and opened up a running store, Runtex. Some people may know it, and kind of overlapped with, and I'll be fuzzy on the details because I was still a kid, but overlapped with George W. being governor, I guess. And so was involved in that and put on many races. And so he's definitely known, especially in the fitness community in Austin.
Yeah. And, in Runtex, used to have, for anybody that's been to Austin, you have town, it used to be called Town Lake. I still call it Town Lake. I think now they call it Ladybird Lake. And there's a trail that goes around the lake. And your Uncle Paul set up kind of water stations on two ends of the trail. So, and he just did that as a service to the community. So if you were out running in the hot Texas heat and you were thirsty, he had water for you.
Yeah, we never miss an opportunity to market ourselves. That's for sure. So,
well, what's really interesting was because I've gotten water from his watering stations. I don't remember anywhere on there saying Runtex.
Yeah,
I didn't think he was promoting it. I don't think he was just doing it because he felt like it was the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, he's his own brand of himself, I mean, he is definitely known even far beyond just Runtex. But yeah, it's very cool what he's done for the community and giving back, and great business owner. And so, yeah, it's for sure in our blood.
Yeah. So, and then he was part of President Bush's board of, what was it, fitness board or accounts, something like that. But yeah, that was really cool. Well, yeah. So, but you grew up, you're in Atlanta now, but you grew up in Northern California.
That's correct. Yeah. So outside of Lake Tahoe, and then my family kind of post-college settled in Sacramento, Folsom area. So we are all California natives.
Cool. And so I was really intrigued by this whole thing of, growing up was like living Shark Tank. What happened? What would that look like?
Yeah, so that's definitely more in kind of our later post-college years, where we were all figuring out, what we were going to do and different ideas. And my parents had a medical lab when I was younger, so we all worked in that. And now I look back and I think it's funny that I was 10 years old at the front desk of a medical lab and no one seemed to mind that was going on, but it really was kind of a all hands on deck. But even during high school, we lived very close to Intel Corporation in Folsom. They have a huge presence there. And so I had a lot of RRP programs. So I was always exposed to a lot of corporate life and a lot of small business and entrepreneur life. And so I think it just kind of morphed into that. So my parents have now attempted to retire twice. They've started nonprofits. They started a bike product at one point. So we're always thinking of different ideas and ways. And We definitely have that entrepreneurial spirit, not afraid to fail, love to try, and love to get people involved and find their talents and how we can really work together.
Yeah. Now, when you were growing up in California, you were telling me something about a story involving a kidnapping. That,
Yeah.
yeah,
My
that
fun, my fun
nearly
party.
impacted you.
Yeah, well, it's actually funny because we lived in very rural Northern California. And at the time, this was like, I think like 88, 89. So I was probably 9 years old or so. And there was a very well-known kidnapping that happened. And it's kind of weird because nobody really thought anything about it. We still, ran around unsupervised. It was all crazy. And 20 something years later, they actually found the girl that was kidnapped. And when it came out, my best friend and I called each other because we were like, that's the people that tried to kidnap us. Like they were the ones that came by and tried to talk to us. And the only reason it stood out was because it was a husband and a wife. And my friend and I remember being like, why would a woman ever kidnap a kid? That felt so off brand of what we thought of kidnappers, right? And so it's kind of a weird thing. So sometimes when people will mention her name is JC Dugard, I'm like, oh yeah, that was actually up in my neck of the woods and it was involved us in 7 degrees of separation. But yeah, it was kind of a very self-maintained childhood. I would say we were really free to go and do, and it was a good experience and you learn a lot. But yeah, there were some wild times in there for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Now, was when the girl was eventually found, was she okay? Was she alive?
She was alive, but it was, I mean, a horrible situation. She'd been in like a shed. I think they found her in like Berkeley area and had children. And, since then I think is doing as better as you can, I guess. But yeah, she was physically okay. But I can't even imagine the emotional trauma.
Yeah, I don't know how you recover from that. I mean, obviously you have to, but that just
Yeah.
so much to work through.
Oh, absolutely.
What was their motivation for that?
Her motivation for
Kidnapping.
Oh, the woman, it was, I mean, deranged people. They were a husband and wife, and the husband decided that he wanted to kidnap some. I mean, how do whatever is the motivation in that? But it was a very bizarre situation. And the wife stayed with him. I mean, they were all together when she was found.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm so glad. And I'm glad you're okay, but what, yeah, they asked you to go out for ice cream or something. What do you think gave you the wits about you to not get in the car with them?
Well, there was no ice cream to be found where we lived. So it certainly was not a common request. And we didn't know them. It was a very small community. We were a lot of just kind of free range kids, but yet there was still an element of protection around us. It was a very highly concentrated Mormon area. So I had a lot of really good faith-based, awesome families and kids that we were around. And so I mean, we knew that that's not something we would ever do, and we certainly didn't know these people. We knew everyone in that area, in that town. So I really don't even think it was something we would have contemplated.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm so thankful that that was avoided for you.
Yeah.
So how do we get from Folsom, California to Atlanta, Georgia?
Yeah. So post high school, I actually moved to Florida and went to school there at a small Christian college there. Met my husband. We moved to Tennessee area, went back to California for a time, and then decided that we really wanted to get back to the South. My husband is from Tennessee. So Atlanta was just a great area for his industry that he was in, which is insurance. Really liked and knew some people in this space. And so we kind of on a whim decided to move, had 2 kids in tow, no job, just kind of was like, all right, we're going to make this work. And we did, and we really do love it.
And you obviously have multiple businesses. What did you start? When did you start? How did you get in business?
Yeah. So I actually transitioned into working as an EA again, and worked for an amazing individual and an amazing company. He retired, and this was like circa 2017. Virtual assistants were the big buzzword at that point. And so I thought, well, I'll be a virtual assistant. And within really 1 to 2 weeks, I had more business than I could even handle. And so that was kind of where the light bulb went on, and realizing, okay, what I believed to be true, which is business owners were suffering from a gap of skills and ability to hire, both from budget, just knowing how, having the resources, and really an untapped workforce of people that either lifestyle, stay-at-home moms, empty nesters, didn't necessarily want to climb the career ladder, but still had skills to give. And so I kind of flipped the model, got out of being a virtual assistant, and really became a bridge to both of those connections and understanding what business owners needed and going out and being able to recruit the talent to do so. So that was all like 2017. I really was only a VA for a couple months maybe, and then flipped that. And along the way, that's kind of where some of the other companies have spurred out of, is just seeing other needs that business owners had and finding a way to fulfill them.
Very neat. Well, and in full disclosure for the audience, I've worked with one of your companies, Mic'd Up Booking. I've had a couple guests from Mic'd Up Booking. Tell us about that. What's that? What was the thought that sparked that?
Absolutely. So Mic'd Up is just a fun company. I really do love it. It's just a really great environment. The team over there is amazing. But the way that it really came about was, as we were going along Bosun, we were also seeing that business owners were struggling with common things, sales pipelines, marketing budgets or marketing efforts, and they couldn't figure out a way to really get what they did out into print media. They couldn't figure it out. And I myself struggled with it. I felt like if I could sit down with a potential client, it was a very easy close. I could understand what they needed, but trying to find a Google ad that would convey that, it was very hard and very expensive. And so we kind of stumbled into, and I say we kind of grew up with the podcast community, because this was 7, 8 years ago, and realizing that, most hosts in podcasts are at a stage of wanting to give back. They're wanting to connect. They're wanting to learn. They're wanting to get people together that they feel like are going to be able to do things and serve each other. And so that was one avenue. And then they were providing all of the marketing content, obviously the active listeners. And so we kind of saw that podcasting became this one-stop shop for a lot of things that business owners were experiencing and pain points. And so we were doing it along the way, and where we would have our own staffing clients saying, man, I struggle with connecting. I don't know how to get pipelines. We'd be like, we kind of have this service and it's really good, and it's only $3.99, would you want to do it? And so I was actually listening to a podcast about 2 years ago. And it was just talking about making sure that your messaging is clear so people understand. And I realized, like, this podcast service does not belong in staffing. It doesn't make sense. People are like, why do you even do this? I thought I went to you for talent. And so that's where we launched Mic'd Up and really kind of gave it its own legs. And it's just been amazing, because now it's really kind of serving as a full PR company. I mean, everything from social media, helping hosts with their own shows, making sure your digital presence is good. We do LinkedIn lifts, Google business posts. So it's really kind of a whole one-stop PR digital presence shop for business owners. And we've just seen it to be a really, really great solution.
One of the things you said there that I think is important to stress, you said that most hosts are at a point where they're wanting to give back.
Mm-hmm.
And, the one thing I've learned in the, podcasting world, whether you're a guest or a host, the people who do best have a heart of service. They're looking to serve more than they're looking to take.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And I find that's true just in business in general. But when you are, and I use this comparison a lot, because sometimes people will even say, well, I thought about starting my own podcast. And I don't think every business owner is at that stage, both in bandwidth and time and ability, and you want to be at that place that you are able to give back. You don't want to be starting a show to hope to get something for you, right? That's never going to be successful. But I use this, analogy a lot is, what's easier? Is it easier to come to someone's home for dinner and have it be about you and you're served and you're able to talk about yourself and it's the whole night is about you, right? Or is it easier to be the one that's serving? You're making the dinner, you're cleaning up, you're handling the invites, you're making sure everyone's taken care of. That's really the difference in being a host and being a guest on a show. Both equally important, but you really need to evaluate where you are in your stage of business and what your needs are before you take on one or the other.
Yeah. One of the guys that runs with your Uncle Paul, there's a fellow named Jude Sampson. And Jude and I have had lunch a number of times. And I remember one time we were having lunch and I was reaching for the check and he was like, no, I got it. We go through the fight about that. And Jude said, my dad taught me something. My dad taught me that if you always buy lunch, you will never go hungry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You
That's
know,
awesome.
and I think that's the case with podcasting. And as you said, it's even broader in life. But I have guests come on, and there's some that are just very clearly there to take. They may go through some of the steps that make it look like they're giving, but they're really there to take. And I had one episode so far. I've had one episode that I decided not to produce and publish. It was because they came on, they did a 20-minute infomercial.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, this isn't why people are coming on the podcast. They're here to, they're coming to learn something and to get some perspective, and, the community that we're building here at Leaders and Legacies is business owners, not, we're not Fortune, 100 CEOs. Those are not our guests. We have occasionally we'll have a big hitter come in just because it's like, that would be, I think it's ultimately good to hear from some of these outside voices, but we're really looking for people like you that you and your clients. We've had a couple of your clients on as guests. And the common thread is business owners of small or mid-sized businesses, just out in the world and, making it happen, stepping on the brake every now and then and learning from that and coming back. And it's those type of lessons that I think really make, a dynamic community.
Absolutely. And I loved what you said there because we tell this a lot and we've had to shy away from clients who we can tell they're trying to just go on and make this a commercial. And one thing we say as a team is podcasting is a connection. It is not a commercial. So you are there to connect with hosts, with your audience, let them know who you are. It's not a $9.99 buy now commercial. It's not what it is. And you're going to be unfulfilled as our client if you feel like you're not getting that ROI and you really need to see it as a bigger picture. And so we also kind of have to vet that as well, because we can sense it, right? We can sense where it's like, hey, I aired a show. Why didn't I just close $10,000? And it's like, that is not what this relationship is about. And so I appreciate you saying that because we can sense it as well and try to shy away because ultimately they're not going to be happy either.
Yeah. Well, there's, something I learned from Ryan Dice, who's, co-founder of Digital Marketer. He drew three circles on board, and the circles were, and it was a Venn diagram. The circles were authority, acquisition, and automation. And he said, when you're operating in the intersection of these three circles, you have a sustainably scalable business. And so one thing that I think everybody should be working on in their business is building their authority, and podcasting is a great way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's giving you credibility, validity. It's allowing people to, I can't tell you how many people come through Bosun by saying, I heard your story and I know that you are going to be able to help us because I love that you came from small business, and I love that what it's like. I love that you're still in that, right? I still am a small business. And so it's really being able to provide that credibility, let people know who you are outside of anything that an Instagram reel, a website, anything is going to be able to do for you.
Yeah. So as you've been, whether it's Bosun or whether it's mic'd up booking, what are some of the lessons that you've learned in running your business? What are some things that, maybe things that didn't go particularly well that you're able to learn and say, hey, you know what, avoid this mistake. Here's what I ran into.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I feel like all could write a book on things like that, right? But I think overall, I'm definitely not afraid to make mistakes. Not that we aim for that by any means, but I feel like every mistake is a learning lesson. And so we kind of have to evaluate it as a team, as an individual, where did we go wrong? What could we have done better? Where did we miss the mark? In fact, Scott Beebe, if you don't know him, I need to connect you with him. He's amazing, but he is a coach down in South Carolina, and he talks about, going over with your team on a monthly basis of like, where did we show who we were and where did we miss who we were, and so a lot of that can be found in mistakes, whether it's, we took on a client we really shouldn't have, we knew they were against our, values, service, whatever that was. And then just, is there anything that we can implement to make sure this doesn't happen again? Sometimes mistakes are just mistakes, right? There's nothing wrong with your process, but you just went off of it or you made a mistake. But always kind of looking at every opportunity, whether it involves people, whether it involves clients, whether it involves processes, and just really making sure that you are aligned and can learn from those. But heavens, there's a million mistakes I could tell you about. But I think overall is, I would just say as a business owner, is you've got to have a really thick skin and you've got to be really humble. If anybody thinks they're going into this with an ego and that they're going to be their own boss, either life is going to humble you or you're going to self-eject from running a business. So I think if you can kind of keep that perspective, then those mistakes are easier to roll with, and you can show your team that it's okay to make mistakes. We just need to learn from them, and be able to give grace all around, because I need it more than anybody.
Yeah. And back when I worked for someone else, uh, one of my customers was Siemens,
Oh yeah.
and in Germany. And the Germans very exacting, very demanding. Siemens, of course, a major brand, one of the big,
It's
possibly the
big out
biggest.
here too. Yeah.
Yeah. And we made a lot of mistakes, and it was my job to go to Siemens and communicate the mistakes. And one of the things I had to remember, and it actually taught me in the process, there is no such thing as a perfect company. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Where you differentiate yourself is responding to those mistakes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's, I always joke that I have a long fuse until I don't. So it takes a lot to get me to that place, but it's really because I want to make sure along that way we're evaluating it. What can we do better? Are we repeating mistakes? There's so many steps in that, but I think every mistake is definitely a lesson to be learned. You just don't want to keep repeating them. That's the biggest thing as a business owner, right? Is it can't just be a free for all of mistakes. We need to evaluate why this is happening, but you are going to make mistakes, and a lot of them.
Now, the other thing you do is you have I believe a lot of your team is remote. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually everyone is. Yeah.
And so for somebody who's managing a remote team, what advice would you have for them? What's the biggest thing that you've learned that's been successful for you?
So I would just say like a lot, obviously communication, that seems like a no-brainer, right? But then, this is something that we really have to do with our clients is when you're remote, there's so many things intrinsically that get missed when you're working in an office, how someone likes to communicate, what's going on with them at that moment, right? Like you're not going to walk in when you see your boss stressed out, door shut, and just barge in and say, hey, did you want me to go ahead and do it? So there's little things that get missed. And so from the leader standpoint, you have to kind of go above and beyond to make sure expectations, communication is there, because you're going to ultimately be frustrated as well. And the person that's working for you is going to feel like they're just in the dark, right? And so it's hard for business owners to delegate, and I get that, but I think, beginning that trust, having those communication and those conversations, and then just setting expectations. So, you can't get mad at someone when you have thrown over something on their lap and communicated no timeline, how you like things done, what this should look like, maybe an example, and then be like, I can't believe you just brought me this mess. Well, you haven't laid out expectations. And especially in a remote environment, that's even more challenging because they are kind of on their own. So that's kind of from our own client side. Interpersonal for Bosun, one thing we did realize, and we know from business owners, is they don't have the time to give the lovey-dovey, warm and fuzzy feelings to all these remote team members. And they've got their own head down in what they're trying to build. And I respect that. I mean, I feel that feeling. And so one thing that was really important to us is for us to be able to provide that. So for all of our team, internal and our contractors that work with our clients, we are doing monthly birthday parties, giveaways. We have Facebook groups going. We have IT support. We have relationship managers with them. So we can kind of feel like that co-working presence for them, that they have resources to go to, that they have coworkers with their Bosun team members, and that burden is not put on that business owner.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I do hope people will reach out to you, especially for mic'd up booking. And I was just, full disclosure with the audience, I've had a couple of your clients on. The thing that I really liked is you're the only booking agency, and there's a lot of booking agencies out there. Mm-hmm. You're the only one that, kind of reached out to me to say, hey, let's, I want to understand what you're looking for and who you're looking for. And, for those that are trying to get on podcasts, most podcast hosts get tons of applications, mm-hmm. And, right now, out of 10 applications, I'm turning down eight or nine. Mm-hmm. And so, the challenge is to be that 1 or 2 out of 10 that actually get invited on the show. And so my advice to the, anybody listening is I would call Nicole, because one, Nicole, your team is great. And two, I found that you work really hard to make sure to find matches between hosts and guests that really make sense.
Yeah, it's funny because even when I'm talking with potential clients, about mic'd up, and I'm like, listen, we want to know who you want to be in front of, and equally, we want to have the right audience for our hosts. I mean, you got the host. The host is what keeps us in business. We want to make sure our hosts are happy. They've got guests that are showing up on time. They've got guests that are relevant to their demographic and their audience, and so it's equally that, it's funny because in a lot of ways, it's like what I do with Bosun, right? We've got a client that has a need and we have an individual who wants to work. And so we are really making sure to hone in the right skill sets, personality, demographic, experience, and matching those. And so we don't want to do the spray and pray of podcasting, which is I've done that. People have put me on shows where I'm on like Golden Retrievers Monthly and I have no idea what I'm doing here. And I'm trying to find an angle to somehow get involved with this audience. And so we want to make sure that that's very custom and people walk away. And I can't tell you how many of our clients, and I know from my own experience, they get off and wind up doing business with the host because it is that targeted and they understand, the audience that they're hoping to reach. So I appreciate you saying that because the team over there is really amazing at that.
Yeah. Well, how do people reach you?
Yeah. So if you want to go to our website, it's just mic'dupbooking.com. So MICDUP. And you can fill out information there or feel free to email me directly. It's Nicole, NICOLE at bosunsolutions.com, BOSUN. And we would love to get to know more about you and always never shy away from a conversation.
Nicole, thanks for coming on Leaders and Legacies.
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.